Yashodanandana Vrajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Vrajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Bihari Jai Namaskar Paramahansa Paribhajaracharya Sattva Smadhatu Bhakti Saraswati Goswami Bhagavad Jai Nanda Gauri Vaishnava Ki Jai Navacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Names of the whole Sri Krishna Sri Radha Krishna Gopala Sam Kanda Radha Kunda Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadvip Dham Ki Jai Ganga Maya Ki Jai Jamuna Maya Ki Jai Guru Dwarka Dham Ki Jai Swami Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai All glories to that. All glories to that. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna, everybody. Welcome to our ongoing discussion on Bhagavad Gita. It's 16th of April, Friday evening, 7 p.m. Pacific time. And we'll get started. So, last time, I believe we completed up until verse number 19. Yeah. So verse number 19, I believe we completed last time, 16 through 19th. So we'll continue from verse number 20. So far in the discussion, a very, very brief summary. Third chapter begins with Arjuna asking question to Krishna. He's confused if he should act on the platform of knowledge or on the platform of work, because if knowledge is ultimately the essence, or as Krishna was explaining, that the purpose of doing prescribed duties is to come to the platform of knowledge, why you should be engaged in a war. Krishna, in response to Arjuna's question, uses a different terminology. What he referred to as Buddhi Yoga in chapter 2, he's referring as Karma Yoga. And what he referred to as Sankhya Yoga in chapter 2, now he's referring to as Jnana Yoga. So in essence, what he's trying to say is that just because somebody has cultivated knowledge, it doesn't mean that one should stop acting, right? One should actually act, but in proper knowledge. And so that's the essence. And he's trying to emphasize that in this chapter. He introduces a new concept of yajna, which he did not talk about in chapter 2, where he mentions that all work that we do should be done for the satisfaction of Vishnu. And then he talks about this cycle of sacrifice, where living beings, they subsist on food grains which are produced from rains, and rains are produced by performance of sacrifice, and sacrifice is born of prescribed duties. So it's not that we would offer results of any whimsical work. That work has to be prescribed, and we discuss that in detail and the various aspects of it. And the prescribed duties, they are described in the Vedas. Vedas come from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And in this way, transcendence pervades all acts of sacrifice. Those who do not perform sacrifices, they simply act in sin, and they actually consume sin. And there are two aspects to this. First of all, one who claims proprietorship over things which are provided by nature, right? That person is a thief. And then one who enjoys, because he does not recognize a supreme proprietor, would enjoy without offering the various arrangements by nature, grains and other substances and the paraphernalia. One consumes without offering to God, then one gets implicated in sinful reaction. But when one partakes the remnants of the offering to Krishna, then that becomes prasadam. So in this way, then Krishna further elaborates on why it is important to perform sacrifices, but the sacrifice should be based on prescribed duties. Those who do not follow this cycle of sacrifices, they simply live a life of sin. And similarly, those who are only interested in sense enjoyment would fall into that category. But on the other hand, a self-realized person, even though there is no need for such a person to achieve anything, because one is simply doing as a matter of duty, not with a fruitive mentality. And so there's no need for such a person to act. But nevertheless, this individual continues to act, right? He's self-satisfied. For them, there is no duty. So Krishna is essentially telling Arjuna that one should act without being attached to the fruits of results. One should act as a matter of duty and then offer the results of such a work, because such results of such a work are worthy of offering to Krishna. For instance, when we offer bhoga, right? The bhoga which is prepared should not be prepared with an enjoying mentality. Because if I'm cooking, I'm thinking, oh, I like to eat this, so let me prepare this. And while preparing, I'm thinking, oh, it's going to be so tasty, how I will enjoy it, right? And then we offer to Krishna. Well, then the whole the purpose is misleading, right? And why, if one is thinking of only one's enjoyment, then that's that when that dravya or the substance is actually polluted. That's why after the bhoga plate is prepared, one who is offering to the deities is only cover it with a cloth, so that no one looks at that bhoga with an enjoying propensity. The same thing applies to the work, in the sense that if we perform our work with a fruitive mentality that we want to enjoy, right, then the results of that work, we already have an enjoying propensity, which is it's polluting our work, and so it's not worthy of offering, ideally, right? So that's the essential idea. And so once we have work that is worthy of offering, then the results, when we can offer as a yajna, And then whatever the remnants remain, just like bhoga, when we offer to Krishna, the remnants become prasadam. Similarly, if we are earning money, even then money can be offered to Krishna, and then that becomes an act of sacrifice. And when one is acting according to one's nature, one eventually gets situated in one's prescribed duties without any fruitive motive. One is just working as a matter of duty, and so there is no fruitive motivation and becomes worthy of offering. So this is the science, right, of Krishna consciousness. Of course, we have to do direct devotional service, but in a day's time, most people at least work 8 hours, right? And then direct spiritual activities, even if we, do uh, 16 or 32 or 64 rounds of chanting, maybe 4 hours, right? How much time one will devote? One still has to work. So, that's why karma yoga becomes important. It's an important aspect of our life. We spend significant time working, and we don't have to separate our material life and spiritual life. Everything is spiritual. Everything can be spiritualized. So if we take up our prescribed duties seriously and act without fruitive motives and offer those results to Krishna, by that action one cultivates detachment, and then one also cultivates knowledge, because that's the jnana yoga, that I'm not the enjoyer, Krishna is the enjoyer, right? That's realized knowledge, not theoretical. And by situated in jnana and vairagya, that is knowledge and detachment, one can be firmly fixed in bhakti. And then eventually when one is done with fulfilling the obligations and enters retired life, because one has sincerely practiced karma yoga and jnana yoga, one has more time, and then one can fully devote oneself in pure bhakti yoga or meditating on Krishna, because now the mind is not surcharged with material propensities. Otherwise, what happens is, even after retirement, people, they are so much imbued with the modes of passion and ignorance, and one is not trained in karma yoga, one is not cultivated that detachment. And so when the work is not there, they will just waste the time, watch TV, gossip, or do leisure activities, and in this way the whole life is wasted. So it's a gradual process, so one should not ignore. This is very important instructions of karma yoga. It's an integral part of bhakti yoga. It helps us gradually elevate to the platform. So now Krishna is giving many examples. So we'll start with verse number 20, where Krishna gives the examples of various kings who have achieved perfection in this manner. So verse number 20, Karmana Karmaneva hi samsiddhim आस्थिता जनकादयः लोकसंग्रहम् एवापि सम्पश्यन् कर्तुम् अर्हसि. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation: Kings such as Janaka attained perfection solely by the performance of prescribed duties. It's a very important point. See, just by performing one's prescribed duties and offering the results in sacrifice, one can achieve perfection. And Janak Maharaj, who is Janak Maharaj? He's one of the 12 Mahajans, right? What are the 12 Mahajans? Swayambhu Narada Sambhu, Kumaro Kapilo Manuhu, right? Pralado Janaka Bhishmo, Balir Vaiyasaki Vayam. So Janak Maharaj is one of the 12 recognized authorities on religion, or dharma, right? So he achieved perfection simply by performance of prescribed duties. Therefore, even if one has nothing to achieve, uh, one just a sec, I got an interruption. I'll be back in a. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, so um, yeah, even if one has nothing to achieve, just for the sake of educating people in general, you should perform your work. So this is Krishna's instruction to Arjuna. And then in the next verse, he will explain why he is advocating that. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, kings like Janaka, they were all self-realized souls, right? And so they had no obligation to perform any prescribed duties, right? They could, they're already situated in pure goodness. They are not surcharged by the modes of passion and ignorance. They don't have any fruitive mentality because there is no need for them to act. They have nothing to achieve, nothing to desire. Nonetheless, they performed all the prescribed duties. Why? Just to set an example for people in general. So, who is Janak Maharaj? Well, he is the father of Sita, father-in-law of Lord Rama. He is a great devotee of the Lord. So, he was transcendentally situated, but because he was the king of Mithila, subdivision of Bihar province in present-day India, he had to teach his subjects how to perform prescribed duties. That's the duty of the leaders. You have to teach by example. So Lord Krishna and Arjuna, the Lord's eternal friend, had no need. Sorry, Lord Krishna and Arjuna, who is Lord's eternal friend, had no need to fight in the battle of Kurukshetra, but they fought to teach people in general that violence is also necessary in a situation where good arguments fail. Right. So here the idea of absolute non-violence is rejected. So it's a important concept. It also doesn't mean that we take to indiscriminate violence. So what's the qualifying condition? Where when good arguments have failed, right? So when one has already tried other means of consolation and trying to come to agreement, peace, when different kind of compromises, but nothing works, then violence is needed. Otherwise, Lord Krishna and Arjuna, they have no need to achieve anything, right? But they fought, just to set an example. So before the battle of Kurukshetra, every effort was made to avoid the war, even by Krishna himself, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But the other party was very determined to fight, right? Duryodhana says that Pandavas asked, "You want just 5 villages because we are Kshatriyas, our dharma is to rule." So just so that we can perform our varna dharma as a Kshatriya, give us 5 villages. We have 5 brothers, 1 village. That's all they asked. And what did Duryodhana say? Well, I won't give even land enough to prick a needle, right? So as we can see, he was very adamant. So for such a right cause, there is a necessity for fighting. Although one is situated in Krishna consciousness and may not have any interest in the world, he still works to teach the public how to live and how to act. Just like Arjuna, he said, "Oh, I don't want the kingdom. I have no interest in enjoying. Right? I will not kill. Right? I would rather be killed." So this is a completely different level of realization. If you think of other Abrahamic scriptures, right? What is the first commandment? Is "Thou shalt not kill." Right? So it's a different class of people who are accustomed to indiscriminate killing. So for them, it's a different set of instructions. But someone who is advanced in Vedic culture, in Varnashram Dharma, someone like Arjuna, right, is so compassionate that he doesn't want to kill, and then he has to be instructed. Well, when there is a need, a justified violence, he should act, and just set an examples for others to emulate. So experienced person in Krishna consciousness can act in such a way that others will follow. All right. So this is the explanation in the following verse. Any questions on verse number 20?
No, Prabhuji.
Okay. So verse number 21. Yadyat acharati sreshthas tattad evetaro janah sayat pramanam kurute lokastad anuvartate. It's a very important verse, quite often quoted. Translation: whatever action a great man performs, common men follow. And whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. Yeah. So, it's a tendency generally, people who are individuals or personalities who are recognized, people tend to follow, right? So in the present context, what we call influencers, right? So you go to LinkedIn or different social media, there are influencers, people follow them, and whatever they do, other people try to emulate because they've achieved some kind of success, right? And then people feel, oh, this person is of great significance, has achieved success in such and such way, so we'll follow. And then there are influencers from a career perspective, and there are influencers in a lot of different ways. There are people who influence by being a life coach, or personalities who might not have anything substantial to offer, are in the sense that simply entertainers, right? Sports is also a kind of entertainment. There is no inherent value in ability to, kick a ball in a certain way, right? Or different kind of sports, you name it, right? Generally, there's involved some kind of ball, and you have to hit it either with your arms or limbs or some kind of instrument. But it's just some sort of entertainment. There's no intrinsic value. But many people achieve fame just by the skills, and they make a lot of money, and they also become influencers. So there are all kinds of influencers. But in general, the idea is that people, they are influenced by such personalities, and they try to emulate them. So people who don't have proper understanding, they emulate wrong kind of personalities, but at least those who have some intelligence will follow. So in essence of this is a great man, whatever one does, common man will follow. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada mentions people in general always require a leader who can teach the public by practical behavior. A leader cannot teach the public to stop smoking if he himself smokes, right? And then if the leader is has a not a good character, then you cannot expect the population or the citizens of the state to have good character either. Rather, the dormant bad propensities will manifest, just like our previous president. He's not of a good moral character, more than some of the other in relatively, right, even worse. And some of the statements that he made, right, which were very divisive, actually brought out those sentiments in the public, right, which might have been dormant, and they felt more emboldened to act on it. Different kind of hate crimes. So yeah, that is there, right? So people in general, they are influenced by the leader. So Lord Chaitanya said that a teacher should behave properly before he begins teaching. One who teaches in that way is called an acharya, or the ideal teacher. Therefore, a teacher must follow the principles of Shastra, scripture, to teach the common man. The teacher cannot manufacture rules against the principles of revealed scriptures. So, as I was explaining, that influencers are there, but then what is their behavior? How do you know which one to follow? Well, an ideal teacher is following the injunctions of the scriptures, right? Otherwise, whimsically, someone comes up and manufactures their own rules and then acts on it. And he might have achieved some success in some field, but is not in accordance to the scriptures. Then the influence of such individuals is not good for the society, right? So people in general should also be educated with what kind of behavior is worthy of emulation. Revealed scriptures like Manu Samhita and similar others are considered standard books to be followed by human society. The leader's teaching should be based on the principles of such standard scriptures. One who desires to improve himself must follow the standard rules as they are practiced by great teachers. The Srimad Bhagavatam also affirms that one should follow in the footsteps of great devotees, right? Mahajana Gata Sa Pantha. And that is a way of progress on the path of spiritual realization. The king or the executive head of a state, the father and school teacher are all considered to be natural leaders of innocent people in general. right? So if you see people, when do they start? Just from a young age, we are influenced first of all by our parents. We start going to school and we're influenced by our teachers, right? And then as an adults, we follow, you know, our administrative leaders, and whatever example they set, people would follow, right? So these are all important personalities who can influence the masses. All such natural leaders have great responsibility to their dependents. Therefore, they must be conversant with standard books of moral and spiritual codes, right? So unless one is trained, is aware of what is, has a discrimination of what is right and wrong, one can do damage, especially one if one is in a position of authority. So it's pretty straightforward. Anyone has any questions on this particular verse? Okay. Verse number 22. न मे पार्थास्ति कर्तव्यं त्रिषु लोकेषु किञ्चन नानावाप्तम् अवाप्तव्यं वर्त एव च कर्मणि. O son of Pritha, there is no work prescribed for me within all the three planetary systems. Nor am I in want of anything, nor have I a need to obtain anything. Yet I am engaged in prescribed duties. So now Krishna is talking about himself, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. First of all, he is not subject to any regulations of the scriptures. Just a sec. Looks like my son hurt himself. I'll be back in a minute. Hare Krishna. Sorry, looks like the temperatures are high, and my son was playing outside, and the nose, the vein, I think it started bleeding. I think in India we hear, but generally it only happens when the temperatures are too high, like in India 45 or something like that. I don't know what they call in local languages. We call it like naskori. It's just like too much heat, your nose starts bleeding. And so that's kind of strange. He's not used to warm weather, it seems, and it's not too hot, but yes, all of a sudden his nose started bleeding. I just put some cotton. I don't know if there's a better way to address this. Anyone?
Don't know, Prabhuji.
Okay, I hope he's fine. Okay, I think where did we stop? We just started this, right? Yeah. So Krishna is saying that I have nothing to. There's no work prescribed for me within all the three planetary systems. Nor am I in want of anything, nor have I any need to obtain anything, yet I am engaged in prescribed duties, right?
Prabhuji, I was just looking on the web. A good way to fix that nose thing is to put some ice, take some ice in a cloth,
Okay.
and hold it against the nose, so that will freeze the blood.
Okay. I just put some cotton with turmeric on it and applied on it. Maybe let me see. I'll get him an ice. Just give me a minute.
Prabhuji.
Sorry. Okay. The purport Srila Prabhupada mentions the Supreme Personality of Godhead is described in the Vedic literature as follows. The Supreme Lord is the controller of all other controllers, and he is the greatest of all the diverse planetary leaders. Everyone is under his control. All entities are delegated with particular power only by the Supreme Lord. They are not supreme themselves. He is also worshipable by all the demigods and the supreme director of all the directors. Therefore, he is transcendental to all kind of material leaders and controllers and is worshipable by all. There is no one greater than him, and he is the supreme cause of all causes. So in essence, it just establishes the nature of the Supreme Lord, right? He is a supreme director. He is the proprietor of everything, and he is nothing to achieve, right? Yet Krishna, what he says that in order to set an example, I continue to perform the prescribed duties. Okay, he does not possess a bodily form like that of an ordinary living entity. There is no difference between his body and his soul. He is absolute. All his senses are transcendental. Any one of his senses can perform the action of any other senses, right? So Angani Yashya Sakalindriya Vritti Manti, right? Pashyanti Panti Kalayanti Chiram Jaganti. The Brahma Samhita also confirms this, right? In our case, there's a difference between the body and the soul, right? In case of Krishna, there is no difference between the body and the spirit. He's complete spirit, right? And then his senses are also spiritual. His senses are not material. Our senses are very siloed. The nose can only perform the function of smelling. Tongue can only perform the function of tasting. In spiritual world, um, yeah, the spiritual body is such that the all senses, one sense can perform the function of all other senses. Just by nose, one can actually taste. Just as soon as one smells, right, the taste is also revealed, right? Similarly, this is how the principle by which when we offer bhoga. So when the bhoga is offered to the deities, the deities glance the bhoga, and just by their glance they can actually taste it and smell it, right? So in this way, one sense can perform the actions of all the senses. So again, here his transcendental nature is described, right? So not only is he proprietor of everything, uh, but because somebody might argue that, oh, there are so many proprietors, right? But in this world, when we see proprietors, it's not that they are transcendental spiritual personalities, right? So one might misconstrue and think that, well, Krishna is he might be a supreme proprietor, but he probably still has a material body like us. So here that clarification is made that is not applicable to him. We'll go up again. Since everything is in full opulence in the personality of Godhead and is existing in full truth, there is no duty for the Supreme Personality of Godhead to perform. Right? So two things. One is everything is in full opulence within the personality of Godhead and is existing in full truth. Sorry, it's through a lot of distractions.
No worries, Prabhuji.
Yeah, he still wants to play. His bleeding stopped, so he just ran out. He did not even realize he was bleeding. The neighbor saw him and brought. He said, "Nothing happened to me. I'm fine." So they don't realize, anyways. He ran out to play again. So yeah, everything is in full opulence in the personality of God and is existing in full truth, right? So fully opulent, full truth means it does not diminish, right? Uh, Truth means it's true at all places, all time, all circumstances, right? It's an existing in full truth, and there is no duty for Supreme Personality of Godhead to perform, right? Why do people want to accumulate wealth? Because say, oh, if I accumulate wealth, then I can retire, or just and have enjoy a life of luxury, right? People are, if it's somebody in 30s, if they accumulate, I don't know, say $2 million or something, okay, I'll just invest it and I can just live a life of luxury, right? So Supreme Lord, he's the proprietor and enjoyer of everything. Right? He's nothing to achieve, yet he's performing his duties. One who must receive the results of the work has some designated duty. But one who has nothing to achieve within the three planetary system has certainly no duty. Yet Lord Krishna is engaged on the battlefield of Kurukshetra as the leader of Kshatriyas, because Kshatriyas are duty bound to give protection to the distressed. Although he is above all the regulations of the revealed scriptures, he does not do anything that violates the revealed scriptures. A very important point. So though he is above, he does not do anything that violates the revealed scriptures. There might be few instances where it might, Krishna from a moral perspective, somebody might say, well, he did things which are not recommended in scriptures. And Krishna is Purna Purushottam Bhagavan. Purna Purushottam because he is complete. He has no obligations to follow the codes of the scriptures. Now he definitely performed his prescribed duties within the Varna. So in Srimad Bhagavatam, there is this example, the description is given of Krishna in Dwarka. So as an ideal Grihastha in Kshatriya Varna, right? So every day he would wake up way before Brahma Muhurat, right? 3 o'clock in the morning. And then he would immediately go and meditate on himself. That doesn't mean we have to meditate on ourselves, but he's Atmaram, he's God himself. So he has no one else to meditate on, so he meditates on himself. And after that, he goes and takes, bath, right? And then performs his, chants the Gayatri mantra. Then he offers daily oblations, the Panch Mahayagyas, right? So he does the yagyas, offers sacrifices. Then he gives charity every day in the morning, right? Gold, cows, different paraphernalia he offers, and he gives it to the brahmanas in charity. After that, he attends to some, household duties. So he had expanded himself into 16,108 forms because he had 16,108 queens. And so in each of the palaces, he's doing this, right? And there would be variations of it because in somewhere he's, after that, he's attending different social obligations. He's somewhere he's inviting guests to come inside his home. In somewhere other places he's interacting with in-laws, or playing with his children. From each wife he had 10 sons and 1 daughter. So in this way the Yadu dynasty had expanded a lot, right? And then actually he would start, he will go to the court, right, to perform the duties as a and so from all the 16,108 palaces, Krishna would come out, right? And then all those 16,108 forms would merge into one form, because when he goes to the court, he doesn't need to be expanded into so many forms. But when he's at home, he's associating with each of his wives, and so he expanded the time. So in this way, it's amazing way he displays his pastime. But he's doing all the duties of a Grihastha, right, in the Kshatriya Varna. So by that example, he's teaching, right? Similarly, Lord Rama is Maryada Purushottam, so he's even more stricter. In Krishna, sometimes they find fault. Oh, Krishna, of course, there is no fault in Krishna. Hey, Krishna dance with the gopis, right? I mean, that's immoral. So Krishna is the supreme Lord. Actually, he is the proprietor of everyone. He is the enjoyer, right? So actually, all of us, we are wives of Krishna, right? In spiritual world, we all have feminine form. He is the only enjoyer. And that's here, not literally in terms of gender, but the idea that the idea of the enjoyer is associated with the male form, and the feminine form is to be enjoyed. So in that context, not absolutely in terms of gender terms. So there is not a speck of fault in Krishna, but people might try to find fault in Krishna in different ways. Okay, he did not keep his promise. He picked up the weapon. He said he won't fight in Kurukshetra war, but in order to save Arjuna from the arrows of Bhishma, he picked up a weapon. He ran away like a coward from Jarasandha, right? So people will find some fault. So in Krishna, he's saying he does all these apparent discrepancies. He does it just to establish that he is not subject to it. He's not subject to all these moral codes. But despite of that, he definitely followed all the codes of Varnashram, right? As a duty, as a Grihastha, as a Kshatriya, so he followed all those duties, just to set an example. But as Lord Rama, it's even more stricter, as we will learn. I'll elaborate that in the next verse. But Lord Rama is Maryada Purushottam. Maryada means he stays strictly within the boundaries of what an ideal character is. So if we follow, or if we imitate Lord Rama, do exactly, then we are perfectly situated. There's nothing wrong. But we cannot imitate Krishna. So otherwise we would be at fault. Like Krishna, we cannot lift Govardhan hill, right? That's one example. We cannot expand into 16,108 forms. So Krishna accepted many wives, not that he desired to accept, but these princesses, they were captured by the demon Bhaumasura. And then when Krishna had the princesses liberated, they said, well, no one's going to marry us because we were kidnapped by another man. And so they requested Krishna to marry them, and so Krishna obliged. But Lord Rama, as an ideal human being, he said, Eka Patni Vrata. I will only accept one wife, right? One example. There's so many examples. And so if you look at the life of Lord Rama, one cannot find even a speck of fault. Of course, in Krishna also there is no fault, but apparently it might appear like that. But as Lord Rama, when Krishna appeared as Lord Rama, he agreed to be fully follow the moral codes or bounds of the scripture. That's why he's known as Maryada Purushottam. He's still Purushottam. He's the best among all men, but he acts within Maryada. Any questions on this particular verse? Verse number 20.
Yes, Prabhuji, one question I had was, in the previous verse there was one statement that Prabhupada made, that all senses, one sense does the job of all the senses. Is that true only for Lord Krishna in the spiritual world, or all the spiritual beings in the spiritual, all the beings?
All spiritual beings.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then when he says that he does not possess a bodily form, but when they say that he is Sachidananda Vigraha, so then what
he does
does
not
it mean?
possess a bodily form like that of an ordinary living entity, right?
Okay.
Ordinary living entity means our body and the soul is different. For the spirit, and this spiritual beings, the body and the soul is not different. The same thing when we achieve spiritual form in the spiritual world, there is no difference between our body and the soul. It's just one entity. And that's why all our senses can perform the actions of other senses, right? So it's not some, Krishna is kind and generous, in the sense we are all parts and parcels of Krishna. So we have one of the 5 forms of liberation is Sarupya, right? Achieving the same form as the Lord. So the Vishnu Dutas, they are also 4-armed, 4-handed, right? So when they came to save Ajamil, who was being dragged out by the Yamadutas, and he chanted the name of Narayana, right? The Vishnu Dutas appeared. They had 4 arms. They had 4-handed Vishnu forms, right? So they had the same form as the Lord, and they were also holding Sankha Chakra Gada Padma, right? So one has the same opulences.
And
it doesn't
Prabhuji,
mean one is same as Vishnu. One is still separate from Vishnu and subservient to Vishnu. So that one has to understand.
So Prabhuji, Lord Rama, when he killed Bali, Sugriva's brother, he hid behind a tree to kill him.
Yeah.
Because I think Bali had this boon that whoever comes in front of him, he'll get half his power.
Yes. Yeah.
So then in that case, Lord Ram did not do like, it was not like a proper Kshatriya thing, right?
Yeah, so that's a question that comes up quite often. Let me try to recall what the response to that was. So the response to that, again, I think there is a conversation that ensues. Give me a minute. I'm trying to recall. I remember the second part.
Even I heard that lecture and I also forgot.
I remember the second part of it. I'm thinking of the first part. In the second part, what happens is that Sugriva makes the argument that here how it begins. So he says you acted in immoral activities, and that's why I had to punish you. So I am the king, right? As a king, I am my author, I am obliged to make a judgment and punish the criminals. And your crime was that actually you had misunderstanding. Your brother did not lock you inside the cave, right? He was actually trying to save you, but you misinterpreted, and he was trying to explain. When you came out, he was trying to explain, but you did not listen to him. There was one. Also, you had later on, when you were angry, you had taken your brother's wife, right? And you were enjoying him. In this way, you violated all the moral codes, right? And the scriptures say that if you kidnap somebody else's wife, the king should immediately punish him, give a capital punishment, right? Should be killed immediately. And so there's nothing wrong that I did. He says, well, how is that possible? I'm a Vanara. The rules of, in the rules that you're talking about, they don't apply to Vanaras. Monkeys, they have so many female consorts, right? And they don't make any distinction between brother's wife or anyone's wife. They mix freely. So, what you're saying, it does not apply to us. Now, these are not real monkeys. They're half man, half monkey like, right? Vanar. So Ram says, okay, if you classify yourself as an animal, right, a Vanar, then as a Kshatriya, I have the right to hunt. And when I hunt, I don't need anyone's permission. I can hunt from front or back or from any side. So there is no fault in my doing so. And then when he listens, that he realizes this person is not an ordinary person, is the supreme personality of Godhead. So in this way, the acharyas have explained that whatever action the Supreme Lord performs, as specifically Lord Rama, is Maryada Purushottam, his activities are perfect. Similarly, there are other faults that people try to find, which actually would be more relevant in the next verse. So I'll wait until I'll give that example. Another instance in Lord Rama's life, which is controversial. It's more relevant to the next verse. So I'll wait for that. But are there any questions, or does it answer your question?
Yes, Prabhuji, it does. Thank you.
Okay, verse number 23. Yadi hi aham na varteyam jatu karmani atandritah mama vartmanu vartante manushya partha sarvasah. It's also a very important verse. Translation: for if I ever fail to engage in carefully performing prescribed duties, O Partha, certainly all men would follow my path. So you see the flip side of it. He says, okay, if I do everything right, then people will follow me and they will be perfectly situated. But if I do not do, then still people will follow me, right? And in this way, they will be destroyed. And that is the continuation in the next verse also. So in order to keep balance of social tranquility for progress in spiritual life, there are traditional family usages meant for every civilized man. So this is your family tradition, right? And it's generally based on the principles of Varnashram Dharma. By following that, the social tranquility is maintained. And by that, one can actually make gradual spiritual advancement. So all such rules and regulations, they are meant for conditioned souls. They're not meant for Krishna, right? Because he has descended to establish the principles of religion, he follows the prescribed rules. Because why one of the reasons Krishna appears is to establish religion. That means he has to teach by his example, like an acharya. If he does not do that, what will happen? The common man will just follow his footsteps, right? And because he is the greatest authority, he is famous, right? He says, oh, Lord Krishna did this, I'll do that. Lord Rama did this, so I'll also do that. And if what happens is, you just simply would create disturbances for the society. So from Srimad Bhagavatam, it is understood that Lord Krishna was performing all religious duties at home and out of home as required as a householder. So this is why I elaborated, right? Here Srila Prabhupada is summarizing that description of how Krishna acted as a householder. So it's in the 10th canto. Any questions on this particular verse?
No, Prabhuji.
Okay, verse number 24. उत्सीदेयुर इमे लोका न कुर्यं कर्म चेदहं संकरस्य च कर्ता स्याम उपहन्याम इमः प्रजाः. Sankarasya is mixed castes. It's a very important verse. Kind of a similar argument that Arjuna makes in the beginning. Anyway, let me read the translation. See, if I did not perform prescribed duties, all the worlds would be put into ruination. I would be the cause of creating unwanted population, and I would thereby destroy the peace of all living beings. Interesting, very interesting. Here Krishna is saying, if I do not perform my prescribed duties, what will happen? People will also stop performing. And what will happen? The Varna culture would be lost. And what will happen? Because people are not strictly maintaining the Varna dharma, the Varnas would be mixed. The purity of the Varnas won't be maintained. And what is that called? Varna Sankara. Sankara means linking. Sankalan, Sankara, link. And then Varna linking means the Varnas are mixed. There are no pure Brahmanas, no pure Kshatriyas, no pure Vaishyas, no pure Sudras. Everything is mixed. That means the Varnashram system is destroyed. Varna Sankara. And the Varnas are destroyed, then one work is also tainted by faults, in the sense it's not pure, right? In the sense it's very difficult to act without fruitive mentality if one is not properly situated in a Varna, right? Because now he is not propelled by one's nature. One needs external stimulus. That means there is a fruitive mentality. When there's a fruitive mentality, then it's just, it's not the work. The results of that work are not suitable for offering as a bhoga, just like that, as a sacrifice. Just like the bhoga, if it's prepared with the mentality of I'm going to enjoy, a fruitive mentality, then that doesn't become worthy of offering. And what happens when it's not offered as a sacrifice? Then one gets implicated in sin, right? So that's why the Varnashram dharma is very important in Vedic culture. Interestingly, Arjuna is also makes the same argument, right? In the beginning, he says, if I fight the war, all the men will die, the women will be unprotected, then they would be exploited by other men. And when that exploitation happens, it's across the varnas, right? It's not that those who exploit, they don't look at the varna of the women whom they are trying to enjoy. So it's unwanted population. You're not desiring to raise children, so it's that unwanted population. They're not going to raise them in proper culture, or even the culture they are raised in would be mixed. And so those children would be Varna Sankara. They won't have proper culture. And so that's Arjuna, one of the three reasons. The third reason was this, is I want to fight because I would be the cause of Varna Sankara. So here Krishna is actually answering that question indirectly. And then the actual answer would be concluded in the 18th chapter when he actually tells the real reason. But the essence is right. We don't want Varna Sankara. But the essence is of how to do it. There's a difference in detail, how Arjuna wanted to do it. Arjuna wanted, saying, I don't want to create unwanted population which might happen out of war. But in that process, he's himself not following his Varna duties. He says, so on the other hand, Krishna is saying, you are right, you want to protect, you don't want to create Varna Sankara, right? Because but then that means you want to protect Dharma. But how is Dharma protected? Dharma is protected by following it, right? That's why we have this famous verse in Dharma Shastras, I think it's from Mahabharata. It says, what does it say? Dharma eva hato hanti, dharma rakshati rakshitaha, tasmat dharmana hantabhyo mana dharma hato vadit. He says, dharma eva hato hanti, one who destroys the dharma himself gets destroyed. Okay? Dharma eva hanti, dharma rakshati rakshita. Those who protect dharma will be protected by dharma in return. So there is a symbiosis relationship. How do you protect dharma? If you want to protect money, you put it in a safe, in a bank account, right? But dharma is not something tangible. Well, how do you protect dharma? Dharma cannot be protected by documenting it in scriptures that no one reads. And it's in the dharma is there. The codes of dharma that are there in the scripture. It's in the book. I put the book in the bookshelf. I never read it. Right? It's in my safe. I never read it. Never implemented it. Dharma is practiced when it resides sorry, dharma is protected when it is practiced, right? It lives when it is live, right? And what happens when we protect dharma by practicing it? The symbiosis relationship is dharma in turn protects us from degradation, right? Because now we are protected by dharma. We are acting within the bounds of dharma. So we protected dharma by following it. We gave dharma a place of residence within our activities. By doing that, we ourselves protected. But if you don't do that, that means we are destroying dharma. Now dharma has no place to go. It doesn't have any residence, right? The books, that's not the place, right? It might help to preserve the codes, but that's not how dharma is protected. So we destroy the dharma. What happens? We are, we are not protected by dharma. We get degraded. We don't have protection. We are not bound by those restrictions of injunctions. Tasmat dharmana hantabhyo mana dharma hatavadi. That's why one should not destroy religion, right? That's the second line. And in this way, one should not destroy oneself. So Krishna's injunction is, yes, you want to protect dharma, but you can protect dharma by following it. The varnashram dharma, the best way to protect varnashram dharma, so that the varna sankara are not created, right? You don't want the varna sankara to be created. That means you want to protect varnashram dharma. How can you protect it? By following it. You are a Kshatriya, you should follow your prescribed duties. That's the best way you can protect it. Not thinking about the, in the way you are thinking. So that's what Krishna is saying. Well, how I am protecting it? I want to protect dharma. I want to make sure unwanted population does not come about. How? By performing prescribed duties. See, it's a very different outlook. Both of them want to achieve the same thing, but the means are different. In the sense that one of them is not valid. What Arjuna was thinking. That's why Krishna had to speak Bhagavad Gita. So it's a very important and interesting point. Krishna indirectly is answering over here. I don't know if Arjuna realizes it at this point, but this is Arjuna's one of the arguments initially. Krishna is alluding to it. He says, okay, yeah, I also want to make sure there's an unwanted population, but I will do that by making sure that I follow my prescribed duties. So he's telling Arjuna, hey, you should also follow your prescribed duties. He's coming back to that point. Because in this series of verses, what is the argument? Right, last few verses, he's making, if the leaders, the common man will follow the leaders. Janaka, he achieved perfection by doing prescribed duties. What is the whole discussion going on? Krishna is driving hard, he's making this point, you have to do your prescribed duties. And so now he's coming back to the point. He is indirectly answering Arjuna's question. You were worried about unwanted population. Well, here's how you do it, how you protect and making sure that unwanted population is not created by following your prescribed duties. See, so it's a very interesting take. Of course, remembers everything that Arjuna spoke, so he's got an opportunity, so he addressed over here. Okay, so purport. Varna Sankara is the linking of Varnas, an unwanted population which disturbs the peace of the general society. In order to check this social disturbance, there are prescribed rules and regulations by which the population can automatically become peaceful and organized for spiritual progress in life. Right? There is a gradual progress. By doing prescribed duties, one is established in knowledge and renunciation, as I explained earlier. And only when one is situated in knowledge and renunciation, one can be fixed in chanting and performing devotional service. Otherwise, even if people have time, they will just waste it because they are surcharged by modes of passion and ignorance and fruitive mentality. They just cannot sit and perform devotional service. So the Varnashram system is meant to bring us gradually to that point of steadiness. When Lord Krishna descends, naturally he deals with such rules and regulations in order to maintain prestige and necessity of such important performances. Right? So he comes to establish dharma. Washing. So when Krishna descends, he deals with rules and regulations in order to maintain the prestige and necessity of such important performances, right? Let's unpack this. So he's following all the rules and regulations in order to maintain the prestige and necessity of such important performances. So there is necessity, right, of performing that. And then Srila Prabhupada interestingly used the words prestige. I think what it means is that generally people, they might, not everyone understands the intricacies of dharma, of why certain codes are there in such a way. Of course, ideally everyone should understand, but not everyone is philosophically minded. And then what happens is, by culture or by being accustomed, people tend to practice. And then what happens is, with that comes prestige, in the sense that, oh, he's the performer of this dharmic code, right? And then there is a social pressure. Oh, I also need to maintain my social status. So I should also follow. So they might not really know why they need to follow. But because of peer pressure in the society, they might be induced to follow. Of course, that's not the ideal situation, but at least it brings them to the act of performing and acting on those prescribed duties and rules and regulations. And the effect is there, the benefit is there. Just like, somebody knows how the medicine is working, what is the importance, why it needs to, one should take, one is properly educated and they take the vaccine, then the vaccine will act. But even if somebody is ignorant, a fool, does not understand the importance of medicine or how it works, but nevertheless, if that person is administered the vaccine, I say vaccine, medicine, you're all thinking of vaccines right now. One gets the effect of it, right? Without, though the person might be ignorant. So by hook or crook, one has to follow, right? And that's what generally happens in any society. There are not many people who are philosophically minded and they understand the intricacies of the laws of dharma. But by peer pressure, the prestige associated with it, they would act, or they understand the necessity of it, right? So Lord is the father of all living entities, and if the living entities are misguided, indirectly the responsibility goes to the Lord. Just like, if the child misbehaves or does not know how to act, then what will people say? Oh, his parents does not teach him how to behave, right? So the responsibility ends with the leader. It's failure of the leader. Same thing. Lord is feels that he is responsible for the population, and so he wants to make sure that he is fulfilling his obligations. Therefore, whenever there is disregard of regulative principle, the Lord descends and corrects the society, right? Yada yada hi adharmasya glanirvavati bharata. Yeah. Whenever and wherever there is decline in religion, Lord says, okay, I'll come personally, right, to fix it. So we should, however, note carefully that although we have to follow the footsteps of the Lord, we still have to remember we cannot imitate him. So there is a difference between anusharana and anukarana. These two words are there. Anu generally means following. Sarana and Karan. Karan means it's just acting blindly without really understanding, and that means you probably will end up doing everything that the Lord does. But Saran means you are surrendered to the Lord. You surrender to his instructions. You're one with. You understand the motive or the essence of what the Lord is instructing by his actions. And so one can make the discrimination, what is the essence of Lord's action, and then they will act on the essence. That means they won't try to lift Govardhan Hill or marry 16,108 wives, right? That's why if one tries to do anukaran of Krishna, one would be in a very bad situation. But one as anusaran of Krishna, then one is perfectly situated. In case of Lord Rama, one can do anusaran or anukaran. He is perfectly situated because as Maryada Purushottam did not violate any codes. Strictly followed. Of course, Krishna also did not violate. It appears like that. So here examples are given, right? So following and imitating are not the same level, right? So following means anusaran, imitating is anukaran. We cannot imitate Lord by lifting Govardhan hill as he did in his childhood. It is impossible for any human being. So we have to follow his instructions. Yeah, we follow Krishna's instructions, don't imitate him. If you want to imitate Lord Rama. So here is a quote from Srimad Bhagavatam. One should simply follow the instructions of the Lord and his empowered servants. Their instructions are all good for us, and any intelligent person will perform them as instructed. However, one should guard against trying to imitate their actions. One should not try to drink the ocean of poison, imitation of Lord Shiva. So here the example is that many individuals who claim themselves as devotee of Lord Shiva, Shivaratri is just opportunity for them to indulge in sense gratification. They will get some bhang, right? Some intoxication, and they will consume it. And they say, "Oh, this is prasad of Lord Shiva. We offered it to Lord Shiva. Will consume it." So in this way, they are just fooling themselves, right? Well, Lord Shiva also consumed an ocean of poison from Samudra Manthan. The first thing that came out was poison, right? Uh, so, can you drink poison? Even one, small sip of it. So one should not imitate Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva never consumes intoxicants, but it appears like that because people. The thing is, Lord Shiva is so merciful that he gives shelter to people who are in mode of ignorance, right, including the ghosts and other spirits and other demoniac personalities. All the asuras, they are all worshippers of Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva gets easily pleased and he gives some benediction. So he gives because he's in charge of the mode of ignorance. That doesn't mean he himself is in ignorance, but he's in charge of the mode of ignorance. And so those who are in the mode of ignorance, they take shelter of Lord Shiva. And because they are in ignorance, they are also addicted to different kind of intoxicants, and they think, oh, Lord Shiva is like us because he also does not follow rules and regulations. He wears a garland of skulls, and he goes to these cremation places and covers himself with the ashes of dead bodies. So he's just like us in the mode of ignorance, and they say, oh, they think like that. Of course, they don't understand the transcendental position of Lord Shiva. Yeah, he's Mahadev, right? Brahma is Jiva Tattva, soul. Brahma is the original creator, but he's still Jiva Tattva. Lord Shiva is not Jiva. Shiva is not Jiva. Jiva is not a soul. That means we cannot become Shiva, we cannot become Vishnu, we cannot become Krishna. We can become Brahma by the dint of our pious activities. So there is a difference. Lord Shiva's position is very unique. Is neither Vishnu Tattva nor Jiva Tattva. So we should always consider the position of Ishwaras, or those who can actually control the movements of the sun and the moon, as superior. Without such power, we cannot imitate Ishwaras, right? Who are very powerful. Sun can purify everything, right? Just like, if someone urinates, right? Then the urine which is impure, it's evaporated by the sun. And what happens? That moisture goes and that becomes rain cloud, and the water is pure. What happened? The impurities went away. Sun purified, right? But who can do it? Well, sun can do it. Sun can purify everything. We cannot. Lord Shiva drank poison to the extent of swallowing an ocean, but if any common man tries to drink even a fragment of such poison, he will be killed. So there are many pseudo devotees of Lord Shiva want to indulge in smoking ganja, marijuana, similar intoxicant drugs, forgetting that by so imitating the acts of Lord Shiva, they are calling death very near. Similarly, there are some pseudo devotees of Lord Krishna who prefer to imitate the Lord in his Rasa Leela, or the dance of love, forgetting that their inability to lift Govardhan hill. So it is best, therefore, that one not try to imitate the powerful, but simply following their instructions. Nor should one try to occupy their positions without qualification. There are so many incarnations. Yeah, India is like a factory. You have so many people who claim to be God, right? Bogus incarnations. They really don't have any power of the supreme Godhead. So that's the sum and substance of this verse. Any questions on this? Actually,
what tattva is Lord Shiva?
Shiva Tattva. It's
Shiva,
a different tattva of his own category.
and he's the only one of that tattva.
Yeah.
Okay, Babuji.
So I think I was trying to make one comment over here, right? Wanted to give an example of Lord Rama. Another incident or pastime that occurs in the Ram Leela that is commonly misunderstood is why did Lord Shiva banish Mother Sita? And it's the essence of why he did that is what is described in this verse. Of course, Shiva is, Mother Sita is Lakshmi herself, and she's completely pure. And even the Sita that was kidnapped by Ravana was Maya Sita. It was not the original Sita. Um, and then when Sita is the Maya Sita or the illusory potency, right? The energy of Vishnu is always within the jurisdiction of Vishnu himself. And there is no one can capture. So it's impossible that Sita would have been kidnapped by Ravana. This is explained by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Chaitanya Charitamrita. It explains that. So Mother Sita, when she was taken away, that was Maya Sita, the illusory potency of the Lord. And then when she comes back and she goes through Agni Pariksha, the test to prove her purity, not that Rama doubted it. Of course, Rama never doubted it. But people might question prajaha, right? People, they are interested in all kind of gossips, and by if she would be the test is that if she's pure, then when she passes through the fire, she would be unharmed, right? So when Maya Sita actually, after she is delivered and she passes through fire, that's when the real Sita merges, and then not merges, but comes out. So in this way, the Sita was never kidnapped, and there is no question of her purity in question. No demon can ever capture her. But common people, they're always interested in gossiping. So despite of all this, right, we have this washerman. This washerman in Ayodhya, and Lord Rama as a king would often go out as a spy, right? He would be disguised in a different form, like a common man, and have you would go and just to see what people are talking about, what are their problems, how they are living, are they following all the rules and regulations. And so when they get, because sometimes what happens is your ministers and others, they give you a very rosy picture of the things, and they might not always, and so it's kings, they often go and try to probe how the situation is directly firsthand. So anyway, Lord Rama, he overhears this conversation where this washerman's wife, she was out of his home the entire night. She was not at home. And then she was associating with some other man. And so the washerman became very angry. He says, you are an unchaste woman. And, the Shastras, they say that such unchaste women should not be maintained, and you brought disgrace to the family. And so I'm not Lord Rama, who would accept a wife who has stayed with another man, right? And so I'll reject you. So in this way, he throws her out. Now, that washerman was following dharma in terms of what he did, but the example that he quoted, he's saying, I am following dharma, Lord Rama is not, right? And so the flip side of this is, when Lord Rama heard it, he says, this person is following dharma, but he's quoting that I did not follow dharma. In future, somebody on the same pretext would say, oh, Lord Rama did not follow dharma, I also won't follow dharma, right? And what will happen? I will become the cause of creating unwanted population. This is a Rama thinking. Right. As a Kshatriya, I am responsible to maintain that the Varnashram's order. There should not be an unwanted population. And when people will think, oh, it's okay for women to mix with other men, even if they are married, and it's okay for men to maintain, means then they are encouraging that behavior, where an unchaste woman is maintained by the husband, and then there would be unwanted population because of that illicit mixing between men and women. The varnas will be destroyed. It will bring about the ruination of society. I don't want to be the cause of that. And though I know that there is no fault in Sita, she's completely pure. She was never even kidnapped by Ravana. But in order to set an example how an ideal person should behave and not encourage such behavior of unchastity, I will banish Sita. Right? So it is such a personal sacrifice, not only for himself, but for Mother Sita. He had to take a difficult decision. It's also very less understood pastime in the activities of Lord Rama. But it goes back to the same very point where the Lord is saying, I have to make sure I perform my prescribed duties, and so that the whole world is not put into ruination, right? So in this way, Lord Rama also shows his exemplary behavior. Again, very controversial. But if one really understand the importance of Varnashram Dharma, how important Varnashram is, this idea of not creating a Varna Sankara, that's like, people in the current time, because Varna Sankara is everywhere, people don't care about it, but it's a big thing, Varna Sankara. And you can see to what extent people were, the personalities were wanting to go to avoid that Varna Sankara. Arjuna not willing to fight, right? Lord Rama rejecting her own consort who was completely flawless. So these are the examples of the importance of two things: Varnashram Dharma itself, but then how the Lord actually makes sure that he follows the prescribed duties, even at the cause of personal sacrifice and defamation. Right? People will criticize in both ways. Because he did not reject the wife, he will get criticism for that. If he rejects the wife, still he got criticism, right? So it also teaches an example for us that we should not worry about criticism, because people will criticize nevertheless. We should do what is right, right? And right in the sense, right for the ultimate good of the society, especially those who are in the leadership position. That's what Lord Rama did. He said, if I do not reject my wife, I'm getting criticism, right? This washerman is one, but there would be so many. And if I reject, I am sure to get criticism, right? Not just this generation. How Ramayana happened 2 million years ago. Still people, Ramayana here, and people will criticize. So he says, that means it also shows Lord is above fame and infamy, right? Is not considered with honor, concerned with honor or dishonor. And so we should also learn that we should do what is right and not be so much worried about what people think, because the criticism would always be there. There is this example or parable. I'm probably a Panch Tantra story, I cannot recall, but there's this father and a son. They are traveling, and so in the due course they are passing through different villages. And so they're passing through the first village, and initially the father, I think the son is on the donkey, son is riding a donkey, and father is following. And so pass through the first village, and the villagers say, look at the son. He's in his youth, he's young, and he's so healthy, he can walk easily. And he's making his old father walk, and he's himself seated and having a nice ride. He does not have any respect for his father. In this way, people were criticizing. So anyway, they pass through the village, they go through the next village. And then when they pass through the next village, what happens is that, well, they were hearing what people were criticizing. See, let's correct it. So they switch position. Now the father is seated on the donkey, and the son is walking. They pass to the next village. The villagers say, "Oh, look at this father. You know how cruel, inconsiderate he is. He's an adult man, right? He can walk easily, right? And he's making his son walk, right? You know, he's making his son walk. He's himself enjoying the ride, and he's completely inconsiderate." So again, they were criticized. So anyway, they cross the village. They move on, and they again overhear the conversation. So he said, "Oh, people are criticizing. We have to fix this." So what they do is they're passing to the next village. Both of them sit on the donkey. The father and the son, they're both sitting on the donkey and they were traveling. And they pass to the third village, and the villagers look at it and they again start gossiping. He says, "Oh, such cruel, father and son. This poor donkey is one single animal, and they have no mercy on this poor animal. These two individuals with all their weight, they are sitting on this donkey and making him work hard. Such inconsiderate people." So again, they got criticisms. So then they left the village, and he says, "I think maybe you're not doing it right. We have to fix this." So he says, "Okay, next village we're going to pass." So none of them are on the donkey, right? So both of them are walking. The donkey is walking. They're walking along with them. They pass to the village, and people start gossiping. He says, "Such a fools. They have a donkey, right? This is an animal they can use for their own advantage. They can sit on it, and they don't have to walk. But then they are just walking on their own. They're not sitting on the donkey. Such a fools," right? So no matter what you do, people will find faults and will criticize, but you have to do what is the right thing. So it's in this way there are many different parables and fables, which also give an example, and then Lord personally by their his own examples shows how we should act and do the right thing, even if that decision might be unpopular, won't be understood, very highly likely to be misunderstood for generation and ages. Still one should do what is the right thing. Okay, so that was verse number 24. I think it's already about time. We'll take a break, but if there are any final questions, we can take them right now.
No, Babaji, no questions right now.
Okay, very well. So we conclude today's class. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Thank you, Babaji. Srila Prabhupada.